Good evening, everyone. I'm calling the Southborough K-8 School Committee meeting to order on Wednesday, June 11, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. All committee members are present, as well as all of our principals, which we don't always have, so welcome to the team to my right. So first order of business is public comment. So if you have a comment for the public, our policy states that you have 3 minutes to make your public comment. We do public comment at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting, and we'll do it for a duration of 15 minutes. And we ask that your comment relates to items that are under the purview of the school committee, and that we do not use anybody's names in that session of public comment. So with that, I'll open public comment. So if you have any for public, feel free to raise your hand. And I'll have you, maybe if you can sit in the front row maybe. Does that work for camera?
It works.
Okay.
I haven't spoken in front of a school committee since I was in elementary school. It was for something that was more cute, so. She has a song prepared for me. But I had to write this because I did want to time it and make sure I was 3 minutes.
Perfect.
So Sydney Lindstrom, 104 Marlborough Road. I'm eager for some common ground when it comes to respecting the outcome of the NERI vote and considering the future of the research that the NBC spent an immense amount of money and diligence on. I know our charge is not determined yet, but the results of the vote gave actionable feedback, and it sounds like the next steps will provide latitude to allow us to get closer to a collective decision on a solution to the NERI issue that factors in cost, benefits, and our current climate. So that brings me to 2 requests that I would like you to consider. 1, I request that you find ways to help the NBC include more teacher voice. And 2, I request that you, proponents of education, so people who recognize the nuances of teaching and learning, help the NBC format information in ways that are more accessible to residents who receive and process information differently. So I just want to get into my rationale real quickly on those 2 requests. 1, about teachers. The teacher perspective is important because teachers are the ones who occupy our school buildings for upwards of their entire careers, we hope. And teachers know the needs of Southborough students best. But even with the STA's letter that was read at town meeting, where a collective statement was made that teachers appreciate that our community values the work that they do, that they need intentional spaces to do that work, I still had wonderings. So as someone who went to public school, teaches at a public school, and sends my children to public schools, I want to make sure that as a voter, I support the infrastructure plans that our Southborough elementary teachers deem as various viable options that maintain or ideally enhance the educational experience. And that I stand against any option that teachers know would negatively interfere with that work. I'm hopeful that the school committee can help teachers feel empowered to communicate insight without jeopardizing the relationships that teachers have with parents and caregivers that may have differing opinions about capital investments and public education. And about accessibility, considering town elections, the percentage of voters who came to vote in May was impressive, but it goes without question that there are many other people in town who could potentially tune in today, or tomorrow, or in a month. Because it seems like the next iteration of taxpayer input is not going to be as concrete as do you support funding $70 million for a new school or not. The multiple options could create an even more overwhelming experience, so I ask that leaders are proactive. I think moving forward, the essential compare and contrast information, if that can be as bite-sized as it can be, chunked information that's oriented on one page, that's color-coded, taking into account visual differences, and accompanied by audio, like there could be a QR code right on that page that brings someone, like a video of someone reading the information, that would be beneficial and appreciated by those who previously wanted to make a knowledgeable vote but felt overwhelmed. So I appreciate all of the work that you do. Again, in your partnership with the NBC, new name TBD, I request that you, 1, help elicit more Southborough teacher voice, and 2, help the committee make what seems will be a lot of information accessible so that we can feel more comfortable knowing that whatever plan receives the majority of support is selected because of an informed, inclusive decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Your prep work did well. We had 10 seconds to spare. So.
What should I say?
All right. And thank you for your comments. All right, new business, principal's reports.
So I'd like to start us off, and I'd like to speak on behalf of all of us here, and also Todd, who isn't. As we bring our school year to a close, we want to extend a heartfelt collective thank you from all 4 of our schools. On behalf of Steve, Kathleen, Gary, and Todd, we extend our deepest appreciation to our incredible staff. Your dedication to our students is evident each and every day. We're also incredibly grateful to our SOS groups and our parent and senior volunteers. Your partnership and support has been vital throughout the year. A special thank you goes to our central office staff for their steady guidance and behind-the-scenes efforts that help keep all 4 of our bustling schools running smoothly. And finally, we are very thankful to our members of the Southborough School Committee for your continued support and advocacy. So thank you very much. And now on to our updates. We had a very busy couple of weeks at the Finn School. Last week, our youngest learners kicked off the excitement with preschool field day, a day filled with bubbles, obstacle courses, plenty of smiles. The joy on our preschoolers' face was contagious as they explored different stations with their curiosity and enthusiasm. And preschool classes also had their end-of-the-year celebrations earlier this week, highlighting all the learning that has taken place over the course of our school year. Also, earlier today, our kindergarten students enjoyed their very own Kindergarten Fun Day, an action-packed outdoor event featuring games and playful team challenges. These events not only brought out smiles, sun hats, water bottles, and some scraped knees, but they also highlighted the importance of movement, teamwork, and fun in our learning process. Last week, Mr. Mucci stopped by the Finn School to introduce himself and read a story to all of our grade 1 classrooms. It was a perfect lead-in to our annual grade 1 Step-Up Day, which took place this past Monday. On Step-Up Day, our grade 1 students visited the Woodward School, where they heard from Mr. Mucci about Woodward, toured the school, and learned about what exciting things await them in grade 2. And to top it all off, grade 1 also had their end-of-the-year musical performances led by Mrs. Morgan. Their voices, energy, and joy lit up the stage and all of our hearts. These performances weren't just about music, they were a celebration of all of our students' growth, confidence, and teamwork that our students have built throughout the year. And now on to the
Thank you, Clayton. Woodward is buzzing with excitement as we wrap up a fantastic school year, filled with joyful learning and engaging experiences. We're looking forward to our upcoming field day this Friday, which will include community presenters such as Southborough Fire Department, as well as other local partners kicking off our summer reading and our annual book swap. Our end of the year celebrations will also include a summer reading challenge, and we'll be ending the day with our assembly and dunk tank, which is a student favorite. I'll be in the dunk tank, and any other volunteers. Recently, our 2nd graders enjoyed a wonderful field trip to Southwick Zoo, and our 3rd graders participated in creative arts presentation of Eyes on Owls, where they learned about owl habitats, diets, and calls, and even had the chance to see several owl species up close. Another highlight this spring has been the launch of our book vending machine, which has been wildly popular with students, so much that during my recent visit to Finn, I think all the questions were about the book vending machine, and nothing about Woodward School other than that. So it's clearly drumming up some excitement. As Clayton mentioned, we're incredibly grateful to our parent organizations, SOS, for their generous support of all these programs. Students get to attend field trips and creative arts presentations at no additional cost to families. So we're really proud of that. Tomorrow we're excited to welcome several members of the Southborough Police Department to serve lunch to eager students. And on Tuesday we had our final string concerts of the year. Our 3rd grade string students worked so hard this past year and ended on a high note, no pun intended, by performing mini recitals for parents, families, and classmates.
So recently for NERI, our 4th grade students enjoyed an unforgettable trip to Boundless Adventures. This unique outdoor experience offered students the opportunity to challenge themselves both mentally and physically in a safe and supportive environment. Boundless Adventures' mission is to empower and inspire individuals to stretch beyond their comfort zone, which is felt throughout the entire day. As students navigated rope courses high in trees, they demonstrated courage, resilience, and a willingness to try new things, helped build their confidence and push past self-imposed limits. We're so proud of how our students represented our school and embraced the day's challenge. It was a powerful reminder that growth often happens just outside of our comfort zones, and that to be boundless is truly to have no limits. And last week, our grade 5 students participated in an engaging and educational assembly by the Massachusetts NERI. The program focused on water safety and treatment, connecting directly to our science curriculum and helping students better understand the importance of drinking clean water. In addition to the discussion, students had the opportunity to take part in hands-on pH activity, wearing gloves and goggles. They felt like real scientists. They worked in small groups to test pH levels of drinking water, an important step in understanding how water is monitored for safety. This week wraps up the year with Step Up Day on Monday. We have 2 visits. One already happened to the Freedom Trail and the State House for 5th grade. I was fortunate enough to visit Woodward for lunchtime questions, and they had some really good questions and lots of ones I didn't get to that they'll be writing to me about. Our 5th grade farewell was last night with Jesse Green, the machine, who spoke about his chainsaw designs. He didn't bring a chainsaw, but he did share some of those creations with us. The end of the week brings our volleyball tournament and ends with our grade 5 marching band around NERI Friday afternoon. So all in all, a really exciting and fun way to wrap up the year.
As we approach the end of the school year, I want to take a moment to share and celebrate some wonderful examples of student learning and community engagement at Trotter. I want to highlight our music department, which has been in full swing this spring. Students have participated in a variety of performances, including a joint chorus and orchestra concert with NERI, an in-school concert, and a performance at the Southborough Senior Center. And our band also performed the national anthem at the Woo Sox game. Tonight we have our jazz night. Former Trotter student Connor Jenks will be the highlight performer. It will be a great experience for our students to have the opportunity to perform with a professional musician. Special thanks to Mr. Clark and Mrs. Alzapidi for their dedication and tireless efforts in preparing students and to represent our school so well. Another musical highlight came during our field day when our 8th grade jam band took the stage and energized the crowd with such gems as Hold the Line, Bohemian Rhapsody, and of course Sweet Caroline. So, in regards to academics, we've also been having engaging and high-level project-based learning that promotes research, analysis, and communication. Just 2 days ago, our 6th graders held a symposium as a culminating project for in the EL curriculum for the novel The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. Students researched modern-day problems, innovations, and presented on topics ranging from the invention of aspirin to the first flushing toilet, self-driving cars, and streetlight technology. They shared their findings with faculties, peers, and family members who visited throughout the day. The symposium was a fantastic opportunity to connect with the curriculum to real world while involving the wider community. Today, our 8th graders also kicked off their civics action projects, selecting a wide range of relevant topics tied to our school and our Southborough community. Topics included advocating for later school start times, I'm sure you're familiar with that, evaluating elective options and club offerings at Trotter, exploring vocational opportunities for students in our CASTLE programs, analyzing school recycling and composting efforts, and supporting local animal shelters. These projects involve deep research, problem solving, and public presentations, and we're proud of the thoughtful, mature ways students have tackled these issues. These experiences are strong reminders of what our students can do given the chance to lead, create, and connect. We're proud of their accomplishments and grateful to the educators and the families who support them.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments on any of the schools? Okay. So I want to thank all of you and your faculty and staff on behalf of the Southborough School Committee for a wonderful school year. I'm struggling with keeping up with all of the events that are going on for all the schools and making sure I try to hit most of them, or at least one of us can. So I think that's just a testament to the commitment that your faculty and staff have to make sure that families feel included and that we can see the progress of our own students over the course of the year. So I appreciate all the efforts that go into those events. I know it must not be an easy task for you guys to schedule, but it's really hard for us to manage too. And Gary, I was actually at the Woo Sox game that that the band played at.
Okay.
It was awesome. I had my daughter with me, and we were we were in the outfield, like on the
It
field.
wasn't warm.
It was awful, actually. And she was so excited. She's like, "Do you think that could be me someday?" I'm like, "Yeah, it totally could." So what a great experience for them. They did an amazing job, and I'm so glad I got to
It was
see
Battle
it.
of the Burrows that night, correct?
It was Battle of the
And
Burrows.
cat night.
And which was kind of bizarre.
Yes, people brought their cats.
Yeah,
I was there.
it was
There's
weird.
a lot going
It was
on.
so,
I think
it was a lot going on. But they did a great job, so that was so cool to see.
Yeah.
And obviously, all the events that happened at all the schools are great, but the civics project is one of my favorites to go to. So Laura and I actually were able to come this morning
Oh, nice.
to check out a lot of the projects, and every year they get better. And I said to Mrs. Jenks, like, they're so much more actionable this year,
Yeah, they are.
and I think it really is. It's reflective of what your civics teachers have brought to that program, and so I just want to thank them for the great work that they've done with that project.
Great, thank you.
And I would just like to acknowledge the work of the principals. Being a principal is a very challenging and rewarding job. And we're very fortunate in the community to have 4 student-centered principals who really love what they do. The students that they serve are their priority. Being a principal in today's world and environment is far different than principaling 10 years ago. And they do it with grace, hard work, and really excel at it. So I just want to publicly thank you for all of your efforts. And if you're tired at this time of year, that's how you should be feeling. You've worked really hard, and I know that you're eagerly waiting the last day of school. So thank you for your work.
Legislative update.
And no updates at this time.
Okay, transportation update. Mr. LeVoy.
I do have a couple slides that will be popping up shortly. There we go. All right, good. Well, thank you for the opportunity to provide an update for transportation. This update is going to do 2 things. It's going to talk about some of the stuff that's happened this year, almost like a year in review, and also forecast what we have ahead of us with a new contract with NRT. So there are some really exciting changes that are going to be implemented on our horizon, so I want to make sure that you are aware of those. But before we get into the anticipation, I know everyone's waiting for that. So before we do, I do want to talk about this year, kind of the stuff that we aim to do as our goals and where things kind of landed. We did have a reconfiguration to how we allocated our buses for the 24-25 school year. This was done strategically to help really improve the overall experience for our students. So what we did is we did isolate 7 buses for the Finn School. That was 7 buses that were the same for the AM and PM. That had a very positive result, not only on the time in which students were on the bus, but just the consistency of the overall experience for our youngest learners. So that was definitely a positive. The other things to share about how things went for our other schools is that Neary and Woodward did find themselves as a layer of 2 schools together. We did find that did also bring some consistency back to those routes before they were linked also with Finn, and that was just an extension that was not something that was sustainable. So that division of the assets for the elementary schools did prove to be beneficial and provide more efficiencies and better overall time on the routes. Probably the biggest change, and one that probably wasn't known as much, and I do want to thank Gary and Todd at Trotter for doing this, to help with the alignment of our buses. In the morning, we did a transfer. So what happened was at Trotter, once the buses arrived, all the students transferred onto what were just express routes to Algonquin, therefore leaving the Neary and Woodward buses available and remained in Southborough and did not have to make that trip to Northborough. That proved to be instrumental. They were on time virtually every day for that, which really helped with the efficiency, and we do anticipate doing that moving forward. But huge thanks to Gary and Todd there to make that happen, and our Algonquin students, although a little bit chagrined in the beginning because they wanted to probably relax in one spot, handled it very well, and it was a good change that we made. A couple of the other highlights, and this is, as part of the slide, is we did implement a registration process which was successful and really helpful to know exactly how many students we would be having on the bus. This is a non-binding registration, obviously, but it just gives us enough guidance to help refine things as best as possible. So that was definitely something that we are going to continue going forward. The other piece that I want to share, and certainly in comparison, as we had reported last year, we had a very difficult year in 23-24, where over 75% of the days of school were disrupted with a bus route. That means that either we were doubling up a bus was significantly late, or the driver was unfamiliar with our roads and was not on time and was not building that efficiency or the consistency that we hoped. That rate of disruption decreased by more than half for this school year. The other thing that's worth noting about that rate for this school year is that the majority of those days that were disrupted happened in August, September, and October. And since Halloween, and I do define that as a day, the consistency of the routes, the drivers, their abilities to be in every day proved to be very beneficial to reducing that number of disruptions entirely. So when we did have a need for a disruption, it wasn't as impactful, and that was good to be able to manage. It was more manageable this year than the year before. So that's really a testament. There are a couple factors of why that is true, but the major factor is having the consistency of the drivers and then showing up every day for both districts. So that proved to be very, very beneficial. Before I jump into what we're going to be expecting ahead, are there any questions about what we implemented this year, its impact, and anything that you would have questions about?
Keith, I have a question on the second slide.
Yep.
So, well, no, the one that was up there, the second half of this slide.
Mm-hmm.
So, the measurement is that the disruptions were cut in half,
Mm-hmm.
with fewer than 30% of school days experiencing interruptions. Then you said, however, most interruptions occurred the first 3 months. It was kind
Correct.
of like once they got through the learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that before, in that first 3 months, the disruptions were higher than 30%, and then
They
after
were.
that it was lower?
Correct.
So that's why the average, okay,
Correct.
got it.
You know, and one of the things that happened at the beginning of the school year, which is something typically happens, is a few of our drivers resigned, and there weren't enough substitute drivers to jump in and take over or have the time to really learn the routes. So that is what created the majority of that disruption in August, September, and October.
Got it, thank you.
It wasn't just the learning curve of a new route, it was the dependability of those drivers, which was the biggest source of the disruption.
Do you have any hard numbers on ridership?
We did 3 different collections of ridership over the year, which proved to be somewhat helpful. And it was done by hand, which it has been done for a while, and that's something we're going to discuss with what we're anticipating for the upcoming year. It was no substantial differences than what we've seen before. One of the days we did it was a bad weather day. One of the days we did it was a good weather day, and tried to fit something in between. There was nothing really remarkable about what we discovered. It was what we had expected.
For the changes that you made, but what about
Right.
compared to a prior year?
What we found is probably, and I think Principal Ryan would agree, that we had more Finn students riding than we have had before. So the numbers on the Finn buses were greater than we had had previously. I would say Neary and Woodward were rather consistent with what we'd seen before.
Okay.
And I also think that is a factor, not just because of the reconfiguration. It has to do with the disruption that was experienced in those first 8 weeks of school that made it a non-reliable source to get them to and from school. So I think it was like, well, we got to go to Plan B.
Okay.
So we're hoping to renew some of the trust in the system for the start of the 25-26 school year.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, looking ahead, one of the things I wanted to start with is certainly a thank you to Becky and her work. We did go through a procurement process of going out to bid for our contracted bus services. We did do 2 rounds of that, if the committee does recall, which did lend us to only 1 bidder, and in that was NRT. We've been working with them on the first layer of contract with NRT, and everything is going pretty well with that, and we hope to have that finalized relatively shortly. But one of the things we wanted to make sure that this contract included was a high level of accountability, and that's something that we're going to talk about how that's being implemented. But a few other things that is going to make the job of managing our buses better are some of the highlights that are on this slide. The first being live camera access. We are having the cameras on our buses upgraded so that the principals, as well as myself and Sheila Hanna in the central office, can directly feed into the buses and what is transpiring to help offset some of the issues that might come to us at a later time. So we're hoping for a successful run at that. We are hoping to pilot those cameras and that system this summer with the ESY program as they run about 5 routes between the 2 towns, and hopefully get some good data from that implementation. The second, and this is one that Chelsea hopefully will enjoy, an upgraded bus tracking application. The new application that NRT is launching is directly connected to kind of their, almost like their power school of theirs. It's not a third party application, which this one that we use now, Whereas My Kid was, and it had a lot of shortfalls. This is really integrated into the main system that they run, so there is going to be a reliance on that for daily operations from NRT, which then in hope would provide some more reliability for our families, which was definitely a deficit of the prior application. But just like with anything new, I think we're going to have to see how it goes. We have heard very good things from other districts that have launched it, so we're hoping for a smooth rollout, and that's something we're going to be sending out to families more right at the beginning of August, so they have time to prepare. But similarly, it's going to behave similar, where a parent needs to create an account using their student ID and then set up their zone. So when the bus, their bus, comes into that zone, it will provide a notification. So that part's not different. The hope is that the reliability on that and how those buses are assigned correctly to the routes will be where we find the improvement. The third, and probably one that we've probably most excited about, is that turn-by-turn navigation. Verbal turn-by-turn navigation is going to be on each of our buses. So no longer are we going to have the day of a bus driver driving down the road with a route sheet in front of their face, which just brings me anxiety. So the turn-by-turn navigation is something that we've been longing for. Now the technology is going to be required on the vehicles, and that will be piloted this summer with our ESY program. I'm excited to hear some of the outcomes of that. The next piece is an RFID student tracking system. We are going to do this as more of a slow rollout. Basically what it's going to mean, and Hopkinton has this system, just like we have our key cards, students will be given a card that is assigned to them. They will be going to a scanner as they enter the bus and then as they exit the bus. And that will be a data point that will be live tracked by our office as well as the school, so we know where every student is. Obviously, that's going to take some learning. That's going to take a slower rollout. We have a couple strategies we're going to do with that. We're learning from Hopkinton and from NRT, but we are really excited on what that can create. So not only is that going to be a safety feature that I think all the principals are going to agree is going to be very helpful, but it's also going to provide us with that ridership. It's no longer going to be done by on a clipboard and us counting heads. It's going to be actually knowing what the more analytics around the ridership that we are able to incur, which will help hopefully lead to more efficiencies. The next piece is that NRT, and this was part of the contract that we said, are going to have more of a leadership role when it comes to the routing management. This was something that was primarily done by myself and a few others at central office, but really it has to do with what the drivers are doing day in and day out. NRT is going to have more ownership over that, and they really need to be in tune with what the drivers are doing on a day-to-day basis. That's a disconnect that we don't have access to until we hear something that isn't exactly what we publish, and then we've got to do a problem-solving trick. So now having this more in the hands of NRT is hopefully going to lead to better, more efficient routes that can be publicly shared. And the last item for the update is certainly around accountability. We have seen progress overall this year with NRT's reliability and efficiency and some of the planning that they've been doing. But as we look forward to our partnership with them, accountability is going to be the key piece. In our meetings that we've had with them, they know that that's something that we are going to be holding them to. The contract is quite detailed. It does have abilities for us to instill some sanctions on them if they lack performance, and that's something that we've already started tracking for the last couple of years. So the alignment of the items that are in the contract that they can be held to a penalty for are things that we're currently already tracking on a daily basis. So that will quickly be remedied with them if we have any patterns that crop up. So a lot to work on this summer, and certainly as we roll into the next school year, but I am excited for it. I think even some of the things that will be in place for the start of school year are going to have an immediate impact, and I look forward to kind of seeing it all kind of roll out.
Great,
So,
thank you.
happy to answer any
Anyone
questions.
have any questions or comments about next year's changes?
Question on the RFID.
Mm-hmm.
Will students, if they fall asleep and fail to get off the bus, will they be notified immediately?
Yeah, so that's something that the drivers are going to get a lot of training on, and they're going to have access to the data as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination of not only what the driver's going to see, but what we can see back at the schools.
Well, that's great.
Could I add something, Keith?
Sure.
So drivers also do checks up and down the aisle when they leave any
That's true.
school facility. I should clarify, so when they leave Woodward,
Mhm.
so they're done with their NERI run.
That's
If a
great.
child happens to be a NERI student, which has happened, they would be driven back to NERI. And if a child is still on the bus when they're doing the clear, then they figure out where they need to go.
That's great.
So a few more layers.
Mhm.
Anyone else have any other questions?
Will we, given the success we saw this year of splitting the bus routes, they'll continue next year? Any tweaks or?
Slight adjustments, Alan. I think there's going to be a couple modifications to some of the routes, but nothing substantial. I think people can anticipate what they had this year is what they're going to have next year, with a couple of mild changes that we've noticed that we're working with NRT to implement. But for the most part, no significant changes.
So for the first three, the live camera access,
Mhm.
the tracking, and the turn by turn,
Mhm.
how will that be handled on a substitute bus?
Great question. So because it is now part of the core operating system of NRT,
Yeah.
it's not going to be something that will be as difficult to reprogram. So what we've experienced and you've experienced is when there's a substitute bus, I forgot to sign in as that route, it's not recognizing it as that bus. That is going to be something
Okay.
that is done, is the only way that route's going to be able to operate is by going into that system.
Mm-hmm.
So the hope is that that's the fail-safe. It's almost like the route can't be engaged until that assignment occurs.
Okay.
The hope is that then translate to maybe a refresh on the app, nothing more
Yeah.
than that. But that's the part I'm not sure of. That's the part I want to really pay attention to this summer with the pilot as we do in the ESY program.
Okay.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
So it's also about accountability, so making sure that when our NRT has a sub-bus for us,
Yeah.
that it actually works in the way that any other regular bus would. So if they're taking a bus from Westborough to cover a route for our district, our job is to hold them accountable for making sure that bus is equipped with what we're paying for.
Okay. What about parents having access to your child's RFID?
Right.
Does that exist?
That does not. So
Okay.
that will be solely held by the school, but the good thing is that many layers will be able to access that. So
Okay.
like some of the times when the communication gaps occur, we're gonna go right into the system and it's
Mhm.
really gonna cut down on the time. So the districts that have done this, Burlington, I think, is the one that comes to mind. That was one of the biggest comments they had. They were quickly able to get that versus
Okay.
having a chain of bad communication that led to more questions.
So
we're
is there
gonna
any,
reduce that.
any potential integration between the RFID system and what the offices have for what how that student's mode of transportation should be, especially in the afternoon? And I'm more thinking about the K-5 students.
Yeah.
like, making sure that if this kid is SEDB today, that they didn't then just get tagged onto the bus.
Sure. So one of the things that we've implemented at the schools, and I thank the principals for this, is that daily accountability to know where kids are. That's been something that we took time to integrate appropriately in the beginning. I don't see that changing
Okay,
until potentially technology catches up. I don't forecast that as it's currently designed.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And back to the turn by turn, or the routing, I don't know which one. So you have it loaded in your system that this is the route.
Yep.
Is there a flagging system to say this bus went off course, like especially if you have a sub driver?
Yes.
Right? And does that proactively alert you? Or
No,
Sheila?
I had that question. I did not get an answer to that question. It does proactively notify the driver, like
Okay.
it should, which is probably most important in these
Yeah.
situations. And it provides a course correction.
Okay,
So it's similar to what you and I would experience if we were going to Fenway and we took a wrong turn.
yeah,
You would get a course correction that would be, pretty successful in doing that. I haven't seen that yet. It's going to be interesting. We might even practice some of that this summer to
I think
see
that'd
how
be
it
good.
performs. But I don't believe it has a notification for us, but I did ask that question.
okay. And my last concern, it's not really a question, but probably something I'd ask you to follow up on, is let's say the systems are down,
Yeah.
whatever happens,
Mhm.
we need to make sure that whatever paperwork is on that bus
Mhm.
is up to date based on the most current route that's electronically available.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that way we just have a contingency.
Yeah, those procedures are not going to change with
Okay.
the advent of this new technology. It's just going to be there to reinforce, especially in the beginning when it's new.
Mhm.
Maybe we have some different ideas on how to do that going forward, but I don't see that changing.
Okay,
Another layer, right? It's another layer
Mhm.
of safeguard.
Yeah.
Mhm.
great, thank you. Anyone have anything else?
These changes, do you imagine that they would have an effect on ridership, or do you think that they're just mostly like this is the standard now from a safety perspective, and that's why we're focused on them?
Well, I think that's been something we've really collected, I think, over the last 5 years, of these things that have routinely popped up as issues, and we wanted to see if there was a solution. Some of these solutions are on the slide here. I hope that it does turn into a beneficial on that end. As far as ridership concerned, I think it really goes back to the dependability of the 32 drivers every day, and them getting the proper training to know the route, so people can consistently rely on getting to and from school every day. If that happens on day one, and I'm calling it NRT Super Bowl, if that happens that first week of school with maybe minor issues, which are typically expected, then I think we instill a little more trust in the system, and then our ridership would increase. Because many parents have contacted me and said, I'd love to, I just can't depend on it. And I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
So that's the goal of August 29th. 28th? 29th? Whatever Thursday school is. Super Bowl.
And, I mean, we feel like from a financial perspective, that we have the mechanisms to act on if they are not following through with
That's
these
right.
items that we have, and we're actually gonna hold them to that.
Correct. So our intention, we do it daily. So if we have any interruption that is a violation daily, we're not trying to go back, what happened on last week? No, it's
Yeah.
a daily record that is produced, and then it will be verified with NRT weekly. So that's an
Okay.
agreement that I have with management on how we are going to execute this versus trying to go back and remember what happened a month ago.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We'll see.
You're gonna be busy this summer,
I
I
sure
think.
will.
I hope it works.
Me too.
All right. Thanks, Keith.
Welcome.
And, oh, sorry, how are you doing on the registrations for next school year?
Decent. I think
Okay.
we're gonna, I gotta evaluate that. Sheila and I haven't had a chance to bury into that yet, but I plan to as soon as school gets out. And then it potentially may result in an additional reminder because the percentages are lower than we had last year. But participation was pretty good.
Okay.
It was last year, and I appreciate that from the community. It was helpful to help us design and
Mhm.
change routes.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Final action plan presentation. Great.
So thank you. I did include in your packet an executive summary of the progress toward the 24-25 action plan. It is hard to believe that in June of 2024, we were meeting And the goals of that meeting were to direct the school committee, the school district, to create an action plan based on the events that happened in Erie School. Also at that June meeting, the school committee engaged in an independent review of the events with the goal of reporting back to the community and giving recommendations to the district for improvement. So that took place at the June 2024 meeting, and this evening I'll summarize the progress that has been accomplished this year. So first and foremost, I think it was very important to have an independent review, which was conducted by comprehensive investigation consultants. There was a firewall between the review process and the district leaders, so we were not part of that review other than engaging in interviews and so forth. We also, over the summer, as a district leadership team, developed an action plan in response to what we learned about the events at Neary, and that was approved by the school committee at its August 5th meeting. And that kind of led us to thinking about what work we need to accomplish during the 24-25 school year. The work really focused around investigations, procedures, discipline systems, policy clarity, and family engagement. So the work really, we believe, has led to strengthened proactive discipline analysis to drive improvements. So we have better ways of collecting and analyzing discipline data across our Southborough schools and across our 10-school district. We've really improved reporting access and transparency, so making sure parents are aware of how to report, making sure students know the reporting mechanisms they can report if they're concerned about something. And then lastly, a significant component of the CIC's recommendation really centered around policy and making sure we have an updated civil rights non-discrimination policy. So in regards to policy and investigation procedures, we did spend an extensive amount of time with our leadership team retraining and training on investigation procedures. So what are the protocols and procedures, what questions, how do we interview, who do we interview, so that did take place at the start of the school year. It is something that we've revisited as a leadership team throughout our meetings that we've had throughout the year. We also did 2 quarterly audits. So working with HR, we pulled 2 investigation reports. We audited those reports for procedures and making sure they were thorough and comprehensive. And we took the information that we've learned from those audits and, again, engaged with principals on, okay, here's some best practices to move forward with. And then where we are today is we are finalizing an investigation manual that will be launched this August for principals, which is a pretty thorough manual about the steps and processes to take based on the type of investigation that might be happening, whether it's a bullying investigation, a civil rights investigation, or just a simple conflict between 2 students on the playground. Another goal of the action plan was to onboard a director of belonging and community engagement. So the thinking around adding this position was to give the district focus in this area, that rather than distributing the work across many of the school and district leaders, really having a person who can lead the leaders, be the point person and be a resource for us principals, district leaders, but also as educators. I think this has been a very successful position in our district. The director has led the Coalition for Equity, has led many community events. The Cultural and Music Festival has partnered with Selby around the International Night, helped lead the Storybridge event, and also had many smaller community meetings with parents to get a sense of what their needs were, what their lived experiences are, again, so we can improve. And then the director spent a lot of time with principals, just having conversations and helping principals lead the work in their building. This was all captured around a theme that we launched the school year with, which was a theme of belonging. We asked some core questions. What does it mean to belong? How do I belong? And how can we create a sense of belonging in our district? So those were the essential questions. And this year, we had a more systematic approach to around professional development. We worked closely with, Stephanie Reinhorn, Dr. Reinhorn, our professional development team, and an outside partnership to have a systematic approach. We used our wellness days, our half days, where it was a half day for students and a half day professional development day for educators to really make sure that all faculty and staff had experiences around fine-tuning their skills around understanding bias, attribution, error, and so forth. And I think that was really successful. So in terms of disciplinary data and behavior trends, so I think we've gotten much better at collecting discipline data. So we've implemented PowerSchool discipline module, so that is our student information system. So principals have been entering in incidents in that module. We also are using the bullying reporting tool that we have, and also principals are logging other events that are happening in terms of disciplinary actions. We've collected that data. We're looking for patterns and trends. We've done initial reviews of that data. For example, we're looking at when do incidents happen and where. So do they happen at recess, on the playground, in the cafeteria? What types of incidents are happening? And then really thinking about what's the root cause. What do we need to ensure students have around skills? What do we need to pay attention to as building-based leaders? With the goal of really, again, having better data to inform our work and making sure that we're impacting students' knowledge and skills around expectations in schools. So we have scheduled quarterly discipline data audits. This summer we'll be spending time aggregating all the data that we have and creating dashboards. And the thinking is looking at the dashboards as a leadership team, but also creating community dashboards. So at a high level, the community can see the incidents that are happening and see patterns and trends that we're seeing as well. In terms of anonymous reporting and family engagement, so this was work that we've been working on, really helping parents understand, like, if they hear something or see something, how can they report that? Parents are very familiar with reporting it to a principal or a teacher, but understanding that parents don't always feel comfortable reporting in that manner. So making sure parents are also aware of the reporting systems that are available at the state level. So the state has a problem resolution system where a parent can submit a complaint to DESE, and DESE acts as mediators in terms of resolving that complaint. Making sure parents understand the appeal process to investigations, whether it's a bullying investigation or civil rights investigation. And then most importantly, making sure that we have reporting systems internally for our families and students to use to report anonymously any concerns that they're seeing. So we have been using the Sandy Hook Promise anonymous reporting tool for, and this is our 6th year. The Sandy Hook Promise did update its training materials. It's actually a reporting tool. So across our 10 schools and district, we did do a refresher. We made sure our students are aware of the tools, how to report, what to report. And this year, we added the tool to 5th grade. So working with Mary Ellen Duggan and Catherine Valenti, we worked with educators, and this winter we did roll out the tool to our 5th grade team with the thinking that they're aware of the tool, so when they go to Trotter, it's not new, it's not novel, they're familiar with it. And when they hear at the start of the school year that, oh, this is a reminder, this is a tool that you can use, it's familiar to them. We also worked on making sure that there was a lot of family engagement and really thinking about not just engagement in terms of sending emails, so not one way, but really making sure there are opportunities to listen, to hear, and to engage families So for example, at Neary School, they added a curriculum night that was new, invited families in to meet classroom teachers, to meet the principal, to hear about what happens at Neary School in terms of teaching and learning, ask questions, and really put a face and name to the adults who are working with their children each and every day. So that was a success. We have a large number of events that also were a great success. Principal Mucci did have an arts event. What was it?
The art and music.
Art and music night?
The arts night.
The arts night.
We're going to rebrand it.
The arts night. So again, it was a great way to showcase the talents of our students with art, music, student performances. It wasn't a formal event where parents came for a presentation, but it was a family event where families could bring their family and really engage with other families and see the amazing artwork and musical talents of our Woodward students. So those are the types of events we're trying to promote so that there's true community engagement. And there are many others that took place that were new this year. We also had principal office hours and coffee hours, not new, but again, really put a fresh face on those. Coming out of the pandemic, it's something that we tried to re-engage parents in. And then at the superintendent level, we did offer office hours. So we had 4 office hours that were available to parents across our 10 schools. They weren't, hundreds of people did not show up, but the people who did attend had a lot to share and was important for us to hear, and we really appreciated that engagement. It is, office hours for the superintendent will be something that will continue next year. And then again, the CIC report was presented in October 12th, so this past October, and many of the recommendations were aligned to the action plan that the school committee approved in August, but also focused on looking at our policies and specifically our civil rights non-discrimination policy, and had very specific and targeted recommendations to implement and revise the policy. So the school committees, so the Southborough, Northborough, and the Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee collaborated and reviewed this policy with the lens of CIC's recommendations. A first read went to the combined school committee in April, I believe, this spring, March. So that was a first read. We received feedback. The policy has been since revised further to make sure that all of the recommendations are incorporated into the policy. And this policy will be brought forward for a second read at the combined open meeting on June 16th, so this upcoming Monday. In terms of next level of work, so it is, although we've had an action plan and we're concluding that action plan, it is our belief that the work's not done, that we need to continue the thinking, the work, the analysis, so that we can ensure that our students are having an outstanding experience. And so next level work, we are finalizing the investigation manual, which we will implement and roll out at the NASA, the leadership retreat in August. As I mentioned, we're finalizing policy A180, which is the civil rights non-discrimination policy. I'm pretty confident that that will be approved at Monday's combined open meeting. We're continuing to communicate the appeal and discipline protocols. So with the adoption of the policy, there are some appeal protocols that are new. So we'll be making sure that parents, as we launch the school year, know the reporting mechanisms and tools that are available. And then we're also making sure that we're communicating the policies to families so that the policies are not something that sit in a digital vault and only accessed when something is a problem. Making sure that parents know what the policies are, making sure educators and our school leaders know the policies, understand the policies, and know how to implement them. Part of the work we're doing too is we're implementing a more rigorous training of all faculty and staff across our 10 schools. So we do have an annual training requirement that all employees are expected to complete at the start of the school year. That was a 100+ PowerPoint presentation. So we believe there's a more effective way. So we are actually implementing, we purchased a training module. We that have embedded trainings, videos, short quizzes. It takes longer, but is more rigorous, and I think will result in better training and understanding of all the expectations that we have of every employee. And then lastly, part of the work of the action plan was continuing our partnership with Mass Insight. We had an equity audit completed in 2022 with recommendations that we've been incorporating in our strategic plan. Mass Insight has been working with us this year around surveying families and caregivers, faculty and staff, and students in grades 6 through 12. We are currently finalizing the faculty and staff survey. Over the summer, we'll be triangulating the data, generating presentations and reports to share with the school committee in the fall, and also using that data to inform the next level of work in terms of our strategic priorities and the work that we need to accomplish in 25, 26. And with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions and provide any other detail that the committee may wish to hear.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions on a lot of information?
It was a big job. To implement this plan here.
You know, I think it's important to share that it wasn't my plan. It wasn't my
I
responsibility.
did say this plan.
This was a team effort from everyone at the table, other district leaders not present, and educators. So it was definitely, this plan is reflective of a lot of work of many.
I think that the community should be proud of the work that went into this. I think, you know, sitting here a year ago and saying we're going to do an audit and then people asking, well, what's going to be the result of the audit? I mean, this is the result of a lot of hard work and the district's willingness to partner with the school committee, but also all the other stakeholders, I think is extremely important for the community to know that we have district leaders who are committed to making positive change. And so I'm very pleased with the result of where we're at today. But no, we're not done with this work, that it will continue. But I think we've, Greg and team have built a great foundation to kind of build on top of. I do have one specific question or request that in the fall that we get a summary report of whatever you can provide us in terms of the behavior trends as well as any discipline results, understanding that there's sensitive data there. But I think it would be important for us to understand what is happening in our schools and is there any policy or decision making that the school committee needs to react to as a result of that. I think that would be great. Anybody else have any questions? So this is memorializing this particular action plan. So I'm not anticipating us actually getting another update in this kind of format. Obviously, we'll continue to get updates on agenda items or actions as needed, but I think we're at a place where we can kind of say this is where we landed at the end of the year and we're gonna move on now, if the committee's good with that. I think Greg's probably in agreement with that. Okay. All right. Thank you for the presentation.
We have a lot of action plans moving all the time.
I know.
This is one of many that we're.
Sure.
So So one less, yes.
One less. All right. Okay. I'm gonna go a little bit out of order on this one. I'm just gonna take number 7 first, because then the other ones are a little bit more grouped together, if you guys are okay with that. So school safety, Finn pickleball courts. So it's been brought to my attention and I've observed several instances where, especially at drop-off time at Finn, people who are utilizing the pickleball courts are walking next to the building and through the playground area to get to the pickleball courts. So the challenge with this is the people utilizing the courts may or may not be Southborough residents, and the people who utilize them may not have children in the school system. So reaching that population of people is extremely challenging. So obviously one of the main concerns of the school committee is the safety and security of our buildings for the benefit of our students and faculty and staff, and having people who we don't know walk next to the building is not within those bounds. So I had a conversation with the recreation director yesterday. He was very willing to talk to me about it, and I told him it was on our posted agenda. He was going to let his recreation commission know they're going to discuss it at their meeting, I think, or he was going to give an update to them. But he is going to put together A signs to go into the ground, kind of probably by the backstop of the Eric Green field, which is the field that's the backstop is closest to the gymnasium at Finn School, just alerting people that this is not the route to get to the pickleball courts. And he posted something on his Facebook page yesterday for anybody who follows the Southborough Recreation. And so he and I are going to touch base right before, obviously we're 4 days before the school gets out, so the signs won't be in time for that. But prior to the school year starting, I'll touch base with him, make sure that those signs are put out there, and then he and I will touch base in September. And I guess I'll be visiting Finn in the morning to make sure, because I won't be there anymore. But make sure that hopefully there's an improvement. And Clayton, if there's anything that you see that would be helpful from your side, please let us know.
Yeah, it's an ongoing issue, and it cycles based on their sessions. We had, Greg and I, Keith, others have had conversations with Travis about this. We sent information out. I sent a map with a clear delineation of where to park, where to walk, etc. And we get these parents that are, we had one that was more concerned with her session time than the gate that prohibits access and the students that were in the immediate area. So those people are spoken to as much as we can. And we do have staff that are incredibly diligent for people walking dogs, parents that are walking other children on the grounds, and they do a great job with that. But it's something that I think needs to be addressed more consistently within the community, so we have a very clear understanding at the beginning of the year, and then in the spring as these sessions start to continue.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your work on that. I really appreciate it.
Cool. It really bothers me. Does anybody have any comments on that? Go ahead.
Question. So you said, so this isn't a Southborough residents only field, right?
No.
Or facility, right?
No.
I mean, I'm not sure that that's for the school committee to comment on. Is that for the recreation committee to comment on? Or
So I would.
Or it's not.
I think it's
really
more
an issue. It's really more.
It's more of a question.
Both.
It's more of a issue of we have a recreational facility open during school hours, and we have people utilizing those facilities who are not respecting the bounds of a school facility.
Both residents and non-residents of the town.
My point in being resident versus non-resident is I think it's harder to reach non-residents than residents.
Okay.
We do have deterrents, we have signage, we have a gate that really stops anyone from accessing behind the gym or the playground area. And then, as I mentioned, staff members, but there isn't a clear delineation between the fields in the playground. It's a very open space.
Yeah.
And I think that lends itself to some of the issues as well.
I think the answer to this would be no, but is there any liability issue? These are on school grounds, or they walk, or they aren't on school? In other words, I haven't been over there. Are the actual courts on the school property? It's town property, but is it school property within the town property, or is it not?
I would say that they're not.
Okay.
They're beyond the retaining
They're on the
wall
pool complex.
section
Okay.
down below.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this was CPC
CPC.
funding that
Mhm.
created those.
Yeah, so they were tennis courts, and we've used, town meeting voted to use CPC funds to create
Okay.
pickleball.
It's just the issue of going over school property to get to the
Mhm.
courts, that's the problem, right?
Yeah,
Problem.
It is a problem.
yeah. Well, and that's the area that recess is on as well, so. Which then you at least have staff members out there.
Right.
But in the morning,
But it's also, to Clayton's point, it's the traffic, it's the cars in the parking lot. and
totally.
So that
Mhm.
is something we have to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they being directed to park now?
Sorry?
Where are they being directed to park now?
Uh,
Not on school property?
No,
Well, they're
that's-
being directed to park in the Mooney Field parking area, which is also the overflow for our parent parking
Right.
during times of arrival and dismissal.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go back to number 5.
Sure, so I'd like to give the school committee an update on the June 3rd select board meeting. I think part of the agenda was talking about the failed vote for Neary and what's next, and what are the next actions the select board can take. So the select board chair did present a draft charge for discussion to the select board at its June 3rd meeting. And really, they discussed establishing a K-8 school building committee, and they categorized it as an ad hoc or an advisory committee. They also discussed making it a short-term committee, so having a charge that would go through the end of December, so a small window of time for that committee to do its work. Also, what was discussed was part of the charge would be to do a list of the options, a cost analysis, and they had some other ideas in terms of what this committee would be charged to do. And then the select board chair also discussed bringing information to a fall town meeting to be presented by this committee for town meeting members to become more educated around what the options are, and potentially rank voting or rank ordering the choices. I think the ultimate goal of the select board is to get a sense of what voters are willing to support. So that is the discussion that took place on June 3rd. I think it is pertinent to the school committee because there are specific tasks and responsibilities charged by you as a result of being on a school committee, leading a school committee. But I wanted to share that information with you in terms of what was discussed at the June 3rd meeting.
Thank you. Roger?
So would you repeat, there are specific responsibilities charged by the school committee? Is that what you just said?
So-
or did you
so for
did you say
example,
it that way?
So grade configuration, the
Absolutely.
educational plan, the use of the current facilities. So it would be the school committee's responsibility to, if it decided it wanted to decommission a building. So there's responsibilities of the school committee by its charge and responsibility.
Okay.
We're gonna get to some more details and some
Okay.
later agenda
Okay.
items on this. Okay, so the select board is discussing an ad hoc charge at their meeting next Tuesday evening. I put number 6 on our agenda in case they were ready for us to make any comments prior to that meeting. And it is not ready for our review for comments tonight, otherwise you would have had it already. But I think, and this is gonna come up a couple of times during these couple of agenda items, this is typically our last school committee meeting of the school year. We don't typically meet in the summer. Last summer we did, and I'm going to make a recommendation that we continue to meet this summer. We have a lot, I think, hopefully we're gonna agree to in the next couple of agenda items. But one of the reasons why I think we need to be prepared to meet potentially after next Tuesday's meeting is to provide feedback to this draft charge that select board is either gonna approve or have some, I don't know if they're planning on approving something next Tuesday, but hopefully at least then it will be up for discussion. I think the more collaboration and positive energy that we can bring as multiple boards and committees and community members and residents and however you want to categorize different groups of people, the better. So this is hopefully more to come after Tuesday evening's meeting. So I would just ask you that we look for an email from Cheryl after that to try to get some sort of meeting, and it may be quicker than what we normally try to plan for, just so that we can keep it moving. I think it's already a month, over a month, or it's about a month after we kind of knew where we stood, so I would like to see us be able to move as quickly as we can. Does anybody have any? Roger?
So, is it your understanding, and I actually watched, I didn't go to the meeting, but I watched the video of the entire proceeding to talk about this subject with all the public comments, remote and in person. So, is it your understanding that they are going to approve a charge at their meeting on next Tuesday?
I think it's a potential.
Okay, because clearly, if they approve a charge at the meeting next Tuesday, they will have no input from the school committee and no collaboration from the school committee. I mean, clearly, I do agree with you that, we need to take a look at what they did, whether they want collaboration with this committee or not. Fair?
Agreed.
Okay.
So in items number 8 and 9, there's items on there that I think I would like to discuss tonight, that I think we as a school committee should direct Greg and team to take on, regardless of what happens on Tuesday night. And there's a few reasons for that. One, these items are under our purview, and they should be driven and conducted by the school committee. 2, I think that we have a school that we brought forward to be replaced in the next year, right? Like we were gonna take Neary offline a year from now. So I think we have some immediate needs that we cannot wait to decide what the select board charge is gonna be. Like we just don't have time to.
I can't agree more.
To wait for them to figure out what kind of direction they wanna go in. And so I think the items that we're gonna discuss, and I have 11 of them in these 2 agenda items, I think most of them are critical, that we get going now. And that's the other reason why I think we need to be prepared to meet in July and in August, so that we can get status from Greg and team and provide any feedback as needed, as well as we have parents who have a second grader that maybe in their mind thought, my kid's not gonna go to Neary because they're gonna stay at Woodward for X number of years. So I think it's incumbent upon the school committee to make sure that the community feels that we have dotted our i's and crossed our t's, and we have a plan, even if the decision is that we're not gonna continue with the MSBA process for this particular project.
Could I also add
Go
that
ahead.
tomorrow morning I will be meeting with the town administrator, the chair of the select board, another member of the select board, and the chair of the building committee to look at the draft charge and to have a conversation and dialogue around, what is the intent, what is the goal, who's involved. So you will have input through my participation in that meeting. If there's anything that the school committee would like me to focus in on in terms of that charge, I'd be happy to do. But I also would share that the work that you potentially will ask us to do will dovetail in whatever work an ad hoc committee is going to do. So they're going to need the data that we're most likely going to collect to make informed decisions around what's the next best solution to the Neary problem.
And I did speak with the select board chair earlier today, and I explained to him what the intention of the agenda items were on the agenda for this evening, and I told him I would share, if the school committee agreed with the path that I was gonna present this evening, that I would share my list with him, so that he knows for Tuesday what the path is that we're taking, independent of a potential charge or ad hoc committee.
Okay,
You have more?
well, are we moving on to item 6, or an item?
We're on to item 6, which was,
No, I'm sorry, so we aren't to item 8 yet, are we?
I think we can group 6, 8, and 9 together,
All right,
because I think I think they need to go together.
well, let me offer something
ahead.
then. So, you had asked me to review the policy.
Okay.
The Building and Ground Safety and Inspection Policy, C-160, which I did.
Okay,
I'd be happy to, I can do it in 2 minutes, I think. I can at least summarize my view of the policy, if that will help people. And everybody can read that policy, including any citizen, right? It's published
Yeah.
on the website.
yeah,
So, want me to give you the 2 minutes?
sure.
Okay, so, and this is for all schools, right? This is not just for Neary,
Right.
Practically speaking, it's the building principal that's really responsible for, coordinating, a number of inspections.
Mm-hmm.
There are basically 6 inspections. 4 of them are annual and 2 of them are kind of as needed.
Mm-hmm.
And they involve a variety of inspectors. As wouldn't surprise you, there's a fire inspection, there's a, and this one I can't, there's a gas services and equipment inspection, and I'm not exactly sure, the town is supposed to do that, but I don't know who from the town does that inspection. Okay, boiler and heating, inspections done either by the state or by a heating company.
Yeah.
And these so far are all annual. Then there's a Board of Health inspection, it's probably somewhat familiar
Yeah.
to you, but that's really only as required. That's not required as an annual inspection. I don't.
The
know
kitchen is,
The kitchen is, okay.
Yes.
The policy just says as required,
okay, so state regulation from the Board of Health side
okay.
is that you
so,
have to
yeah.
inspect,
There's,
twice a year, actually.
okay, the other annual inspection, other than the 3 I mentioned, which were fire, gas services, and the boiler, okay, I don't know why they split those 2, is by the insurance provider,
Yeah.
property insurance provider. And then there's not, it's only as required, typically, I see this done every year, there's any elevators or lifts, which I don't think.
Would work.
Let's see, who's,
There's one here.
Trottier's got, of course.
Yeah.
So, which is as required by the
Woodward
building
does
state
too.
codes.
Woodward too.
Woodward
Um,
has one too.
So, that's all I see. I mean, that's not trivial, but it's, but there's a number of them there.
Yes.
And these are, again, under the purview of the school committee to coordinate these. The superintendent then gets a summary from, these inspections, including, an actual copy of the inspections, et cetera. So that is my summary.
Okay. And that's probably a policy that we should add to the review cycle with the joint committee and the
Yeah, I was
policy
gonna
subcommittee.
say, I don't know that anything jumps out here as having, to be immediately changed, okay?
Mhm.
We don't know the last time it was reviewed. It says it was reviewed
2015, I think.
quite a while ago. It was
Yeah.
reviewed, what, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
So,
But maybe provide a little bit more, like just update
Well,
based
we
on
should
what,
list what are the required annual inspections and
Uh-huh.
by who.
right.
So there's a checklist that we can follow. And it comes to,
the only failure that this calls for immediate action is some kind of a fire inspection failure. Then it calls for immediate
Yeah.
action. Other than that, there isn't anything immediate called for.
Right.
That's it.
Okay. So, I think there's a few things that we, as a committee, should talk about in terms of action items. One is the current safety conditions and the review of whatever reports we've already received in the last, call it since 2021, right, which is kind of when this all started. And so, Keith or Greg, do you want to give an update on the beta group and what you've requested already?
well, I can start and keep.
Okay.
Sure.
So one of the goals that we have and outcome of this school committee meeting is that we do have students who will be occupying the Erie School next year. So we have an incoming third graders will be fourth graders next year, and obviously the current fourth graders will be fifth graders. So we want to assure parents that there are no environmental or safety concerns as a result of kids being in that building. We also want to assure faculty and staff who are there and who have been there for decades. So we have a lot of data based on the work that the Neary Building Committee has done, working with our owner's project manager and our architect. So our goal is to hire a person to come in, evaluate all those documents, recommend any additional testing, and just develop a report that we then can share with the community, and with the goal of giving assurance to families that it's a safe building to be in. And we've worked with a company on the Algonquin Regional High School project, athletic project, with the athletic complex when we were dealing with PFAS, which was significant, and we had great experience working with this one particular firm, and Keith can speak to them.
So Beta Group out of Providence, Rhode Island is the group that we did work with for the athletic complex project and resolving the PFAS issues with a very efficient, very thorough review of that. So because we liked their work so much, we reached out to them again. They came on site and did a quick little visit, a quick meeting with me to kind of get scope and understanding of what we want to achieve, and it is aligned with what was just said. So they are currently reviewing some of the documents that we already have, and are putting together a proposal for our review. So we haven't seen really the scope of work that they're going to recommend on that, but it is something that we hope touches on all the different types of concerns that we have heard, so that we can get good, clean answers as to where we are and what's recommended from him. So I look forward to hearing from him probably early next week with a proposal, if not Friday of this week.
So if it's under 10,000,
Mhm.
can you just execute the work with them, or how does that work?
We're gonna review what scope of work they're gonna propose, and
Okay.
Becky and I will connect on, the necessary procurement for it.
Okay.
It is possible, I just don't wanna say definitively.
Yeah, right.
I think they fully understand that, for certain things that they're gonna recommend, if it's something that's gonna trip procurement, we would then have to, put that scope of work out for
Yeah.
a request for quotation.
I think in terms of efficiency
Yeah.
and timeliness, we could say not to exceed
We could,
a limit. And
yeah.
then,
Okay.
and then if,
And then come back.
Round 2 results in a different scope of work, then it might be something we'd have to.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out if we would need to meet again
So
to
if it's-
approve it
so if it's under $10,000,
If it's under $10,000, then we
We
can
can-
Yes.
execute a contract.
without us.
So
Okay.
that's-
And what would your funding source be for that? Do you know?
We could use the facility rental.
facilities rent.
So,
Okay. Okay. So, and the scope of that is just NERI?
yes. Well, no, we were gonna look at both NERI and Finn.
But for example, NERI is the pressing school. So
Yeah.
the scope of work,
Yeah.
we add Finn and exceeds at $10,000.
Correct.
We might,
Mhm.
Then you might, okay. Okay. Yes.
But Keith, are they gonna prioritize?
They will.
Okay.
Yeah, even very similar to this type of conversation, this is their understanding of how this type of work has to be done. So yes, they will prioritize and, give some cost estimates to what different things would do. And then, like Greg said, if their recommendation would be to test for something, that would be something that would be clearly identified and an estimate provided so we can decide what to do with that.
Yeah. And to be clear, this is related to the building, right? So this is
Mhm.
including things like air quality, safety,
reviewing the AHARA reports we get every
Yeah.
2 years.
yeah.
Looking at the water testing that we do.
Yeah,
Looking at the reports that were completed on environmental conditions around the area.
Question, if somehow or other the procurement rules were tripped, are we then into any sort of a bid requirement if you need to do things quickly?
So emergency would be that it's an immediate threat to like health or safety.
Right,
And
so-
when we're talking like real immediate, like, a tree falls on the school and you
Okay,
have to have
okay,
someone
alright.
come in. But I think this would fall under Chapter 30B, so, since it is a service. So I think we would be able to either look at state contract, and I don't know if Beta Group is on the
They are.
statewide contract. And if that's the
Fair
case, then we can utilize that.
Okay,
And then that has certain rules, but the time at which that can be done is a lot quicker
Right,
than
right.
another method.
Mhm.
And that's something that's already been reviewed with Beta, so the things that they would be recommending would fall under that state contract, we've already reviewed that.
I think one of the big things is certainly the roof.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Any questions about 1 out of 11? All right. Are you, and I don't know if we should talk about timeline as we go through each of these?
We should,
Okay,
I mean, they could be target timelines and we
Yeah.
could adjust, but I think it's important to have
okay.
like completion dates. So we
Okay.
know.
So
Do you want me to project
you can predict it, sure. But I went to number 2 first instead of number 1, because I feel, yeah, because that leads into number 1. So what do you think is, I mean, I had 8/31 down as a completion of their assessment. That doesn't mean anything's gonna be done, but at least gives us a roadmap on like what we need to do to update our capital plan, or what other testing we need to do. Is that,
Well, I think I would like to communicate to parents that there are no reports that indicate that kids are unsafe to be in the building, like
Yeah.
sooner than later. So,
yeah,
I think it's a conversation with, Beta Group around the level of analysis that we need to do that, like looking at air quality, looking at the error reports, there's probably some things they could prioritize to do first.
Uh-huh.
There are no reports that I've read or seen that indicate it's not safe to be in that building. I do not expect to hear anything different, but I want to have that report to be certain. So I would say August 1st for that first tier.
All right.
For that first tier of things, sort of the most critical, does it make sense to do that across all schools? If it's a handful of things and it's, while we're at it, and these are the most critical things that ensures that all kids are safe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Neary is unique in terms of its just age, and I think that in terms of what fiscal resources we have to bring to this, let's start with Neary, but I think it's a good conversation to have as a committee, like, is this something that we should talk about in budget?
I certainly agree with that. I'm just thinking about some future state where it's like, oh, something crops up and it's like, well, why don't we,
Yeah.
it was, anyways.
Okay, so out of that report, then we'll hopefully identify number 3 on there, which is 6 to 12 month must-dos, right? So that could include additional testing. It could include a capital item that needs to be done in the next 6 to 12 months. Hopefully we'll have a better idea of the roof situation. So I would think that would be, if we have our first pass of a report by 8/1, I would think by mid-August, then we would be able to put some list together and have a value, and if there's values that need to go to a fall town meeting, then we have to bring it at that point. Okay. Your silence was like making me nervous. Okay. And then I'm gonna go
Can I
back.
just comment on the roof?
Okay.
So, I think it's important to provide context around the roof and its current condition. So 5 or 6 years ago, we did have a roof assessment at Neary, and it was clear that the roof needed replacement. We also had conversations around submitting a statement of interest to enter into MSB's accelerated repair program to replace the roof. At the time, we decided not to because we were moving forward with acceptance into a core building project. That was a decision that was intentional. So we repaired the roof to buy time, about 5 years, that's where we are today, to get future life of the roof. And we did submit a statement of interest for the Trotter roof and the Finn roof at that time, 5 years ago. So I just want to make sure that the community is clear that it's not that we let the roof go in disrepair, that our approach was one, thinking about what the potential impact of a building project could have on Neary School. With a failed vote, that changes things. It changes the priority of that. So I just think it's important to communicate that context so
Totally
people
agree.
aren't misinformed around we knew the roof needed repairs and we didn't do anything. That is not the case.
But we're gonna be faced with the same scenario.
Correct. We are in a different scenario now.
Right, but we're faced with what are we doing with Neary? So I think we need to have multiple options on the specific roof scenario.
So we are working with a roof consultant around like what are the options if any.
Okay.
But I had to.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Well, and that leads into number 5, which is with a structural analysis of Neary, which would include the roof specifically. So what about a timeline on that one? So you're working with a structural engineer?
I think the work the OPM and the architects did to evaluate NERI, we have those reports. So we could have Beta Group look at those. I think the structural analysis we need is just the roof. Like we need a roofing
Okay.
company to come out and say
Okay.
what needs to be done.
So timeline on that,
In progress as we speak.
so when will it be done?
It'll probably have been July, the roof report. That's fair. Because I am asking him to go back and provide, are there alternatives?
Okay,
And like to Greg's point, if there is an alternative, they gotta dig into that a little deeper
mm-hmm,
versus just saying, no, it needs to be replaced. Well,
Mhm.
okay. In lieu of that, are there any other options, which requires a deeper dive?
okay,
And I've asked them to go back and look at that already.
okay. Next is number 4, the septic at Finn and Trotter. And Woodward's septic is new because it just got tied in with the public safety. So, that's why I didn't put that one on the list. And I don't know why I didn't put NERI here. Should I put NERI here?
Well, we do have the septic evaluation done as a result of the work of the NERI Building Committee, so that is, we
Okay.
have that data.
Okay. But I think, okay. So maybe we just package that together with the Finn and Trotter ones, once they're complete. And this is not to say that we think that they're close to failure, like that's not what this agenda item, or this line item's for. It's really just making sure that they're where we expect them to be. So just validating that. So when do you think a completion date could be for that one?
Well, they're inspected annually.
They are.
I would say that's less pressing,
Mm-hmm.
so,
And certainly by middle of August, I could see that getting done. It might align, so I gotta align would be when that typical inspection cycle happens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that might be a fair,
or end of September.
maybe at the latest, but we usually do have things checked prior to the start of the school year. Just
Okay.
as a smart, process.
Okay. So I think that those items are specifically related to agenda item number 8, which is the environmental conditions review and assessment. And then next is the grade configuration and facilities plan. So number 6 on the item list, update enrollment with latest projection / comparison between RLS, NESDEC, and actuals. So we have updated reports from RLS and NESDEC, correct? And we obviously have actuals from 2 times ago when that was
So we
performed.
have NESDEC updated enrollment report as of December, so that's updated.
Yeah,
We are working with RLS to finalize the RLS enrollment study. So
Yeah.
that should be available in the next couple weeks.
okay,
And then we have the actuals.
okay. So I'm thinking mid-July that that can be updated. And I think that's really important that we have that updated because it's gonna drive grade configuration, and any opportunities that we have there. Okay. Number 7 is update district reports completed in 2021 with current data, and add a layer of program implications. So in 2021, the subcommittee that was formed did some due diligence related to occupancy and how to best utilize our facilities. But what it didn't take into account was actual classroom, like number of classroom needs. So, yeah, you can fit, I'm just making it up, 300 people in a school, but that doesn't mean that you're meeting the educational needs and the programs that we've built in our district. which obviously predates, well, not Roger, but the four of us over here. So I think we need to refresh that data, utilizing the updated enrollments, but also actually look at the schools and saying, okay, we need the ability to have 7 classrooms for this grade level, and then we also need this program to have its classroom, and this is where PTOT and speech are gonna go, and, you know, all the programs that we currently have, and make, and try to layer that in, based on, a lot of, I don't know, I'm just gonna say recommendations, that's not the right word, but a lot of questions that I think we've received as school committee members in why can't you just add a grade to this school and that school and be done? You know, obviously there's gonna be the educational side that comes with that. And I think this is really the crux of what we need to expand on based on what was done in 2021.
Agreed.
Do you agree with that?
So when we did this analysis in 2021, we looked at space and, like you said, enrollment, septic capacity, occupancy capacity. What we didn't have at the time is our educational plan. So the work that we did as a building committee and as a leadership team is really articulate what is the vision for education in our system, regardless of a new building. So we need to take that document and that work and then layer it onto just the space needs, enrollment, and so forth. So we have a better plan of how, if we shift to grade level, what is the impact?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I agree.
Okay, and I think, so, and I think we can, I don't think we, unless you guys want to do this tonight, I think, if you're okay with it, Greg and I can work offline on what groupings of grades could go at each school. Sorry, I feel like I'm looking this way and I'm ignoring you guys. But what, if we were to move, I'm just making it up, 2nd grade down to Finn, and, you know, 90% of our programming can fit in what exists today as a footprint, what's the 10% that would need to be added, and kind of somehow quantify what that is, so that at least we know what it is for further discussion, right? But that would also mean that if we added then a grade to Woodward, what percentage of the programming wouldn't we have accomplished in that structure? And so then we're talking about potentially 2 projects in that one scenario, right? So kind of coming up with but we don't have that level of detail yet to be able to, we just know that it's probably not sufficient for the programming that we're looking at. Yes?
So when you say quantify, are you talking about quantifying what the percentage is of students that would not be able to go there? Or are you saying,
No, I'm talking.
Do you mean quantify actually what we would have to do to get them?
I'm talking about that we would need to add 6 classrooms
Right.
to accomplish the educational vision
Right.
for a pre-K to 2 school.
I got it.
And then you can translate that into square footage, right? But then becomes the challenge of, you have a Finn school that's kind of, you can't really go, I mean, you would challenge with where you're gonna put that, as well as Woodward, right? So I'm not getting into that detail, I just wanna get to what added square footage would we need to accomplish our
So by
programs.
quantifying, you mean quantify the square footage that we would use? Is that what you mean by quantifying?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think so.
fair enough.
Yeah, I think it's that if we moved any grade level to another school, what would we need in terms of space to not impact our art, our music, our world language,
Yeah.
office space, special education space? And then we can quantify, we can then say, you know, it's approximately this amount of square footage.
Yeah. Denise?
Plus, I think we have to define the square footage, because people say, oh, there's this amount of square footage in that building, but they're not taking into consideration that a vast amount of it, like especially at Trotter, goes to the gymnasium, goes to the auditorium, goes to the, you know, things that have to be for that educational program. even though square footage is there, it's not classroom square footage.
I don't think we should look at it as a per pupil square footage amount. I think it needs to be like pure classroom square footage.
Exactly.
Or number of classrooms. Maybe we don't even get into square footage, maybe we just say what the classroom number is, or meeting space or whatever. Alan?
No, I don't. I agree with the direction. I just I have like. I guess to ultimately to what end? I mean, it's to we would have, hey, we need to add this number of classrooms, but that's not really what it is, right? We need to add this. We would need to add this capability to the school, which may or may not be additional square footage, right? It may just be that the school can't do it as well as another school, and that's I think missed. Just because you have the space for it doesn't necessarily mean you have the specialized space that
So,
accomplishes something.
I don't think as school committee, we should be looking at an option that wouldn't make sense either, right?
Yeah.
So, like,
But can I add?
yeah, go ahead.
So if the school committee charges us with, like, we want you to evaluate all of these permutations of grade configurations and, you know, enrollment, septic, occupancy, and programmatic, then that is the data we then can provide, for example, the ad hoc committee at the select board level or the town level, to then to be able to take that and translate that into, you know, okay, this option, we're gonna add an addition to this school and it's gonna cost this amount. So I think we just talk about the programming and the space we need and the impact of moving a grade level to a school, and then we can then send that data and say, you know, here's the data to inform your decision about making a recommendation or recommendations for people to consider.
And I think we need to do it thinking about our educational vision.
To not
Can I add a
impact the
thought?
educational.
Correct.
vision.
Right.
I think to your point, Alan, that it can be not just a square footage number, but it can be about the purposes of the
Yeah.
spaces. So like, I think you're thinking of things like a music space is not the same thing as a general education space.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about the additions, there can be qualitative and
I
quantitative
guess I guess that's what I'm
impacts.
pushing for. Is less obviously the numbers are what people are going to care about at the end of the day, but it's a lot different to say, hey, we need a 12 by 12 room to put desks in, and then a 12 by 12 space that's optimized for music or optimized for occupational therapy or is, you know, is actually something we don't have right now, like a maker space or something, and is gearing us up to be better equipped to support students for the future.
Yeah, I think we define it as spaces with integrity
Yeah.
and purpose. So they're designed for that intention. It's not that we have a classroom that is there and we're gonna move, you know, the music department into that room because that's space we have. It's really about what is our vision around music, our music program, and
Yeah.
what spaces do our music educators and students need to have music with integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Can I just ask for a clarification from Alan to Alan? When you say the numbers are what people are gonna care about at the end of the day.
Money.
What?
Money.
You-
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought, which I agree with, right?
Yeah.
It's apparent,
Yeah.
okay.
I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So, do you agree with that direction?
Yeah, I'm having trouble, I guess. What my concern is there's going to be a ton of work put into this, and it's not going to move the needle for anything. So, I think I'm a little bit more confident that focusing on which is actually kind of the opposite of I typically feel, focusing on the qualitative versus the quantitative is maybe, you know, what we should focus on, charge ourselves with to help support.
So I think you're gonna get to you would have to get to the qualitative
Tell the
first
story.
before you get to the
Yeah.
quantitative
Okay.
anyways,
Sure.
because,
And this report can be iterative.
right,
Like, it's not, you know, we're gonna create a draft and present.
Yeah.
And people can ask questions in the community and the school committee.
Right.
Yeah.
And teachers, and we can clarify, we can evaluate it with different criteria. So I think I look at it as a kind of a working document that we're
Yeah.
aiming to complete.
I'm kind of struggling with when we would put a completion date, because I think,
I think we have so much data. Like, it's a matter of synthesis and analysis of what we have and creating those reports. So
Okay.
I don't want to speak for Dr. Reinhorn about what her summer plans are.
Word, what are some of
No, I think let us have a conversation as a team
all right,
and talk about what's realistic, but I don't think we should be spending, I think this is important.
uh-huh,
And I think we have the data, we have kind of the educational plan and vision.
Right.
We have the enrollment data. We just need to be able to synthesize that and package it into a presentation for you. So I'm thinking mid-August.
like maybe a draft in July, and then just an update on where you're at.
Process.
Okay.
I just think there's a sense of urgency.
I agree,
And,
I agree.
you know,
So also number 10 is a specific request for a options table, including grid configuration and classroom needs. So,
Which I think is gonna happen as
As
we
part
do
of
this,
that.
because I think it's how we're
Yeah.
gonna organize our thinking.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
wonder, and I wonder too, this is a
I've been
partnership
picturing
with
it.
the select board,
what'd you say?
a partnership with a select board around doing an options table.
Yeah,
Like, we present the data and the
Mhm.
different scenarios, and their charge is then to take all of these and translate these into potential options for community members to support or not support, and put a dollar amount to it.
to it.
But we maybe are presenting the configuration options that they're creating into like plans or.
Yeah. Okay. Before I go to number 9, because that relates to C1, is there anything else related to grade configuration and facilities? Okay. So I'm just gonna skip down to C1 quickly. So this is Neary Building Committee, next steps. Do you wanna talk about this?
MSBA.
Yeah,
So, yeah, with a failed vote, the district was required to submit a communication to the MSBA that, of the failed vote, notifying of the failed vote, and a brief analysis of potentially why. So we submitted that. We did receive a response from MSBA, and another letter stating that we need to have a plan around how we're going to solicit community input and feedback around the why. Why did it not pass? So I need to submit to MSBA by June 30th the plan of how we'll do that.
okay. Okay. I mean, I think one of the challenges is it's either a yay or a nay, and it's hard to know what rationale was behind why a person voted yes or no. And I think, at least from the voter data that I looked at, the percentages of school-age parents was much lower than what I was anticipating. So maybe it makes sense for us to put a survey together for the community that kind of has like decision tree type thing, and to try to, make it be a 2-minute survey, right? Like you can't do much longer than that, just to make sure that people actually respond to it, but try to get some valuable data back on that.
Greg, that's to what purpose? Just because they want to understand the feedback, or that's tied to?
Well, I think
anything in the
MSBA
future?
has a vested interest in this project, and they've invested time and energy in supporting the town
And some
moving
mon-
forward.
and money.
And money.
So I think they always, so we have that 120-day window
Okay.
that we're in right now.
Yeah.
So I think it wants to know, MSBA wants to know, like, just the why a failed vote. And so that can inform community on what's the next step. Do nothing, ask for whatever the next step might be. But that's a requirement of MSBA.
What's the trigger at the end of the 120 days?
So the 120 days so you have 120 days to have the article passed
Yeah.
and the vote approved.
Right.
So the town already voted in the ballot question. So what they would say is, well, you still have the 120 days to do that work. And they want to know why it failed the first time. And and we need to make an informed decision around what to do next. So for example, if you surveyed the community and all of a sudden, people change their opinions or thoughts, then at the end of 120 days, we could ask, the Neary Building Committee in the town could ask for an extension,
Okay.
which then could give time for potentially another special town meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, that's what I was getting at, was essentially like, is that as part of a due process to potentially still have access to that? Okay.
And how in-depth does that response with that feedback need to be? Just, do they need a full report? Do they need?
I've looked at other district reports. It's basic information, just just using data to support your claim. So if you make a claim of here's why, of the survey respondents, here's why these respondents did or did not support a school project. So we just have data to support claims we're making in the report.
Anybody else have any other ideas on soliciting feedback?
It's probably the best way to reach the most people, just like pretty concisely, and to be able to collect that data in one place versus bits of information here, there, and everywhere. And again, it'll give you much more clear, just a ranked, tree of reasons, and here's kind of the numerical order of that. Yeah, seems like a valid way to.
How will you reach those who have no children in the system?
I was gonna say, I think we should take some of the learnings we made of educating people on the Neary Building Committee in the first place. You almost have to go out to events and here's a QR code or here's an iPad, fill this out real quick, because I think that without that and without the looming vote and the impact that it's going to have on folks' wallet, people are going to go back to their average level of engagement with this sort of thing. Both school-age parents and non-school-age parents.
I think it should be not just the school committee's responsibility, it's kind of a broader town. Look, we have access, our responsibility, we have access to caregivers who have school-age children. That's our audience.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily have the same audience as the town does in terms of a larger, broader community audience. So we would be probably getting a sample of why caregivers with school-age children did or did not vote.
Right. Well, we could probably ask the senior center to help us and MTC.
Yeah, right.
and, you know, library,
Yeah.
youth and family.
Reach out to some of the like daycare providers that have like younger children that
Right.
are not even in the school system.
Yeah.
They'd probably be willing to help. You know, if like, we have just like access to other groups in
Mhm.
town, that just to be get a wider sample. Ideally.
I also wonder if, and I can call MSBA and have a conversation around what their expectation is.
Mhm.
But part of the charge of the select board, you know, building subcommittee that they're creating could be to create and survey. like,
Right.
to collect that data. So it's regardless of MSBA or not, it's going to be important information
Right.
to help us decide on what the community can support.
Which I think is why it's super important to go out beyond school-age parents, because we need to, if you look at the data at the end of the day, you want the respondents to that to be reflective of the folks who showed up to the town meeting to vote, because
Mhm.
that's where you want to gauge sort of where you're
Right.
at and what the strategy is.
So when I meet with the select board chair tomorrow morning, is it something you want me
I think,
to
yeah.
ask them to consider in their charge?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll follow up with MSBA.
Okay. So I think if we, after you have your meeting tomorrow, if they're looking for, somebody on the school committee to assist with that piece, is there anybody that would be interested in doing that?
Do that.
Okay.
Yeah, be happy to help put that together. I have, my former life is in market research, so that's certainly something that I have a lot of experience with. So happy.
Okay. I think that concludes the long discussion on what the work is that we're looking for the district to complete over the summer and the direction that the school committee is taking in regards to ensuring that we have safe facilities for our students for next year and in the short term after that until we decide what we need to do. So do you think we need to vote on this list, or you think,
I don't think so.
okay, all right. And I will share this with the select board chair so that he has it prior to his Tuesday night meeting. Principals, you can feel free to leave and enjoy your evening. Thank you for staying for that discussion, but I thought it was important that you knew where we were headed with that.
Thank you.
All right,
Have a
thank
great
you.
summer.
Thanks.
Great summer,
See you
guys.
See you, Phil. Next is subcommittee and liaison assignments. So typically, we update these in the fall. But I put it on here so that everybody could see where everybody else was assigned to. There's one that I think we should replace tonight, which is the policy development subcommittee, which is was Kamali. So does anybody want to do that one? And if not, I would actually like to, but
I'm happy to remain on it, or unless
Okay.
you want to switch it out, whatever.
Well, I think you need two anyway,
you
right?
do need to.
And I think I'd be happy to remain as the alternate.
Okay, okay.
So,
Unless you want to do it, I'm happy to switch out or whatever you want to do.
I think Roger, if you're good with still being the alternate, then we'll have
yeah,
Laura and I do
I
it.
think I'm on a lot, but I think I,
Yeah, I know.
But I'd be happy to remain as the
Okay.
alternate. A lot of times I'll try to sit in that,
Yeah,
in the clouds and watch.
Yeah, and,
what's
well,
happening.
we just have to make sure that if we're all, we can't all go, because then it's a
Correct.
quorum of our committee.
Correct.
Okay. Unless you want to post, then just tell me. You know? All right, so we'll put me in for that. Unless somebody else is like biting at the bit to get into something.
Is there anything else, Chelsea, that,
Well, calendar we're not doing right now, and then budget, we don't need to do that until fall.
The only recommendation is to consider the collective bargaining subcommittee and whether you all want to participate in negotiations or you like a subcommittee of the committee.
So, I'll just tell you what my thoughts are on this. I think it can be challenging to get a quorum of all 5 of us to give up a Saturday to meet on this, or
when you say a quorum of all 5 of us, you mean all 5 of us, or do you mean a quorum of the school?
I think either. I think it could be challenging to get 3, depending on when we do it.
Well, we know when we're doing it. We're doing it, October
October
6th, is that,
Fourth.
right about that, or 4th?
Fourth, I believe.
October 4th
Yeah.
at 8:30?
Mhm.
I mean, I will definitely be there.
Great.
Okay,
So,
I'll-
it doesn't
I'll
per-
commit to that.
So it doesn't preclude us though from posting for a regular meeting too and having us all go. I was
think
just,
if you create a subcommittee for the negotiations
yeah,
and then the subcommittee and quorum of the committee attends, we'll post both.
right.
I think if you have that subcommittee and you don't happen to have a quorum of the
Yeah.
committee, it allows us to move forward
Mhm.
versus waiting for a quorum of the larger committee.
That's just what my thought process
So am I the subcommittee?
is. Sounds like you wanted me the subcommittee.
Fair enough.
So let's put it this way. Does anybody not want to be part of the negotiation process? Okay. So does other than Roger really wants to do it. Does anybody else want to be part with Roger on the subcommittee? Okay. Oh,
Unless you want to.
Laura.
So you want 3?
No, 2.
2, okay.
Okay. You good with that?
Yeah.
All right, so Laura and Roger.
But if other people can attend,
Yeah.
this just means that
The
we
house,
have to
house
have it,
shall
we have to
post.
at least have the
Yes.
subcommittee there,
Right.
or it's gonna
Yes.
mess things up.
Oh,
Yes.
okay,
That
okay,
way,
okay.
Great if everybody can show up,
Right.
but
Yeah.
at least if somebody can't make it because of something,
Oh.
Yeah.
it doesn't mess things up.
What, like, say you and Laura can't show up on that day, it's not, but the rest of us do, that's not an issue, right?
Can-
Right?
If you
Well,
make a
if you have
subcommittee.
a quorum of the committee, so it depends how we post. If we
Mhm.
post both, which we will, we do,
Yeah.
the subcommittee and the committee. The subcommittee isn't present, that's fine, we just won't call it into session.
Right.
Okay.
Quorum of the committee will call it into session. It's like decision tree.
Branching, yep.
So you either need specifically, make sure that we don't, because we don't wanna, we wanna make sure we have this meeting.
Correct.
So you either need to try to answer Alan's question, you either need Laura and I to be there.
Yep.
No substitutions, as far as the subcommittee is concerned.
quorum.
Do you have an alternate for a subcommittee? Not
No.
really?
No.
Okay. Or you need a quorum of the school committee.
Yeah.
Okay. Good question. I didn't know that.
Okay. Good on subcommittees? All right, approval of grants donation. So donation of a Vic First Bell kit, estimated to be valued at $50, pearl, snare, drum, and hard case, estimated to be valued at $100, and a Selmer CL 300 clarinet, estimated to be valued at $125 to the Neary School music program from Michelle Hokinson. So thank you, Ms. Hokinson, for that donation. That's great for Neary. So I will, unless anybody has any comments, I will move that we accept the donation as presented on the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. All right, C2, Trotter Middle School roof update.
Yes, so we were informed by the MSBA a little over a week ago that they have assigned us both a project manager and a designer for the Trotter roof replacement project, which is part of the accelerated repair program that Greg actually mentioned earlier. We did have a pre-meeting with them earlier this week to go over some of the nuts and bolts of the project. We shared documents with them, and now we are going to be preparing for a site visit, probably right after school gets out, so that we can get complete access to the roof. At which time they're going to dive in and provide us with some recommendations on what we can do. So we're on target, and everything's completed that needs to be completed as of this point. But I'll definitely have an update for the committee as we are beginning this week.
And you think we'll go to town meeting to fund this in March or April or next spring, or no?
That's the types of questions that they need to be able to answer depending on the options that are available.
Okay.
What we are hearing is that whole, it's a very saturated market right now with the number of roofs that are being done. So even if we did have ourselves aligned, we may not be able to for reasons outside of our control. But everything we can do to get it done and get those options presented is what we're going to charge for now.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Enrollments.
So in your packet is the enrollment report as of May 15th. I will note that kindergarten enrollment is at 105, so class size for K currently is 15. If you look at NESDEC enrollment projection was 103. RLS's projection was 105. So we're close within one or two students based on their enrollment projections for kindergarten. So no other class or grade level issues or concerns in terms of class size.
And the projections that we had for classroom teachers is the same as what we had gone into the budget season with?
Correct, no change in the number of sections or educators.
Okay. Okay, FY25 budget line item transfers.
Okay, well, I'm happy to report that we don't have any budget line item transfers for the report. That's in your packet as of May 31st, so there is no action needed on that. Would you like me to proceed to my other report?
Sure.
So the monthly general fund report, you will notice that the ending balance as of May 31st was $32,688. So that is up slightly from the previous month of about $2,600. At this time of year, we do start to see some up and down because we're closing things out and then converting things for the rest of the year. Over the next couple of weeks is really key crunch time in the finance office as we are closing out fiscal year 25. Corianne Barsley, who's the financial coordinator in Southborough, has been working closely with schools and the departments to review any open purchase orders that we have, see if those are still needed. If they have already been completed, making sure that we're getting the invoices and that we're processing for payment. So I think, though, that we are in a very good place with this operational budget as we end out the fiscal year.
Great, thank you. Roger, do you want to make the motion?
I do. I move that we approve the Southborough Public School District fiscal year 2025 budget. Monthly general fund expenditure report is of May 31st, 2025 until audited.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Revolving accounts.
Okay, so the food services revolving account really continues to hold steady. There's really not much change in that account. There are a couple, I did want to just speak to the facility rental. We have used that revolving account a little bit more this year for some unanticipated things that have popped up in a number of our schools. One in particular was a roof repair that we did need to do at the Finn School recently. So you will see that we have had expenses of about $40,000. 10 of that is still related to the Trotter paving project. And then we have some open encumbrances still of about $15,000. And those are a number of smaller projects, as I said, just some emergency things that have popped up that we've used that fund for. In terms of extended day, we are, again, closing out that program for this year, so we do not anticipate any additional revenues for FY25. We're really in the season right now where we're gearing up and getting ready for the summer camp program. And so far to date, as of May 31st, we have collected $23,000 towards the summer program. So of that revenue that I'm reporting of $888,000 for the year, $23,000 of that is for the summer program.
And the goal is that that is self-funded.
Exactly.
The summer program
That
is
is the
self-funded.
goal for the summer, yes.
Okay.
And then finally, the preschool revolving account, similar to the SEDP account, we are closing that out for the year. We have about $4,500 in uncollected tuition for the year that I've been working with families on. So we hope to see those come in over the next couple of weeks. And also the revenue does include some of the deposits that families have made for the upcoming school year. So about $14,000 of that 590 is for FY26. But really, but all of these programs are just where we had predicted that they would be.
And we would expect, well, I guess this is a question, would we expect that next year we're not going to see the anticipated year-end balance be less than the beginning balance?
In the preschool
Yeah.
revolving? Correct. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Becky? All right, no educational policy at this time. Policy development and or distribution. So we put these on the agenda mostly because of the update to the action plan that Greg presented earlier. We typically don't talk about joint policies in our individual meetings, but I just put them on there in case there was any questions specific to a policy that we had. But these policies are going to be on the joint meeting Monday evening at 5:30 at Algonquin. So I just more for the public to be aware, because I don't think people necessarily follow the joint meetings as closely as ours. Anybody have any comments?
So these are also available for the public on our district website, so if people want to see the draft policies and provide feedback at Monday's evening, then those are available.
And I would encourage anybody that has any comments to please reach out so that we can take them into consideration. Okay, personnel report.
So in your packet is the personnel report as of June 11th. Just to note that Sarah Colton has been appointed to the administrative assistant to Neary School. So that, congratulations to Sarah. And then we had resignations in terms of ESP and food services, so we are working to fill those positions for the upcoming year. And then you'll see a leave of absence. So Sarah also took a leave of absence from her clerical aide position currently at Neary School.
Okay. And congratulations to Charlene on
Yes, so,
retiring,
yes,
from
return.
Neary School. So unfortunately, she couldn't join us this evening, but best wishes for her. All right, action on minutes. So we have a few executive session meeting minutes and some special open meeting. For the executive session, we're gonna retain them.
Are we retaining both of these?
I left the office, Cheryl, was like you retain one and not the others.
So I think we're retaining the April 9th, but not the June 14th?
I think that is accurate, but let me just check.
Yeah,
it.
okay.
So we're retaining April 9th, releasing June 14th.
Okay. So, does anybody have any comments on any of the minutes other than the executive session minutes? Okay. So, I'm gonna move that we approve the special open meeting minutes of May 10th, 2025, the open meeting minutes of May 14th, 2025, and the special open meeting minutes of May 20th, 2025. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Okay, 5-0, thank you. And then I'm gonna move that we approve but retain the executive session minutes of April 9th, 2025. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right, and then I'm gonna move that we release the previously retained executive session minutes of June 14th, 2023. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Great. Okay. So, public comment. Is there any public comment? Okay. So our next regularly scheduled meeting is Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. But as I said multiple times in the meeting, I think we should meet in July and August. So I'll ask Cheryl, if I can ask Cheryl, to send out a form for us to fill out. I anticipate both would be able to be Zoom. And I'll ask, do we prefer during the day or at night? Like, and I can direct her
I mean, at night is
easier?
typically easier for
Okay.
me. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll aim
I
for
didn't hear.
I said
Day or
at night
night?
is typically
Oh.
easier
What was the preference?
night.
Like,
for me.
And then, so I'll at least try to get something scheduled for, July and August, and then, if we can, depending on what happens on Tuesday, we can update the committee. Okay, great. Anything else? All right, I move that we adjourn at 8:51. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.